you go. My name is Yvette LeFlore, and I am here with Jennifer Gardella, who is a social media and blogging expert. She's actually Dr. Jennifer Gardella. And we are, she is recently a domestic violence advocate, and she has written a book called Listen for the Whispers of Abuse. And we're here to talk about the information that Jennifer wants out in the world. She's incredibly passionate about it as a survivor herself. And when Jennifer and I were talking about this, I said, I really want to come live. I want to do a conversation and share this information. And as I read what you had to say, Jennifer, in your book, it was just even more evident that there's so many different angles that we can share about what you have to share. And I'm just so thankful that you have been gracious enough to come live and talk with people about what there is to say.
Well, thank you. I think spreading the message through amazing mediums like yourself is going to help solve the problem. So you are part of the solution that I am trying to put together, and I'm very, very grateful. So thank you.
So let's start off. I think as a culture, when we think about domestic violence, domestic abuse, we focus on the physical. And your book goes way beyond that. So can you just give us a general overview of what you want people to know about domestic violence?
Yeah, good question. So the first thing I want people to know is that physical abuse is abuse. One time in the pocket, time to call the police, get her help. It's not acceptable. And my work does not at all diminish from the physical abuse that people experience. Where my work does is it adds to the conversation of what starts before the physical abuse. Very few relationships start out with, first date and one partner hits the other in the parking lot as they leave the restaurant. What we need to do is recognize what abusers do early on in relationships that sets victims and that sets the victim up to rope her in, and then how he drips in abuse to the point where she now cannot leave, and it does turn and escalates, right? That's one thing that I really want to talk about is abuse escalates, and sometimes very quickly, sometimes very slowly. It escalates to all forms of abuse, including the physical. But if we educate people on the love bombing and the crazy exes, we're in much better shape.
And I do want to say at the beginning of a conversation, in this conversation of domestic violence, there's not a he or a she, right? It doesn't matter who the partners are. So we maybe use he and she in our conversation, but that doesn't define that it's a male as the perpetrator, female as victim. It can go in any direction.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. And it was absolutely something that happened that I was called on at the beginning of Domestic Violence Awareness Month last year, when I did start talking, female victim, male, like how stereotypical is that? Take gender out of it. And I said, whoa, wait. That's my experience. I can only speak from my experience. However, I completely acknowledge, and now I'm certified through PCADV to work with victims. And there is so much research that shows that 25% of men, 33% of women, and 50% of the LGBTQ plus community are victims of domestic violence. So the conversation is much broader. I only speak from my experience because we can't talk about the conversations would get very lengthy.
Right. Well, yes. And this book is your experience. This book is absolutely your experience. And I think that it's important that we bring that conversation, we just bring that out, that it's not just male, female. So tell us a little bit about, because I think the insidiousness of the drawing in, like I almost get this sense of like fishing with a hook, like in catching a partner and drawing them in. What are some of the things that as friends, we can be on the lookout for our friends when we see stuff happening? Like, how does it show up to an outsider looking in?
Yeah, that is a good question. So the first thing is you're going to see love bombing in the relationship. This is when your friend believes that she has found the perfect mate, right? And he's buying her big gifts. He's whisking her away on vacation. She doesn't have time for you anymore. And this is a tactic. The abuser attempts to isolate her from her life, and he does it masterfully and very, very slowly. So almost no one notices. Oh, we're going to go to his parents for Christmas. I'm not allowed to go to my friend's party because his parents are coming for Christmas Eve. Things like that. Well, you will notice, and they start to happen. She doesn't have time for you on Saturday morning because she's going to go spend the weekend with him again. There's not a healthy relationship developing. It's a relationship of being, the victim is being swallowed. And she thinks it's the greatest thing in the world. Because what he's doing during this time is he's listening very carefully. He's listening to what she hasn't received from other partners in the past, and he's providing it in spades. And she just thinks that she has found this partner who's going to listen and provide to her what she needs. And really, all he's doing, again, is enveloping her entire life. So that's the first thing to listen to. The second thing to listen to is, oh, he has a list of crazy exes. He's always picked the wrong woman. But since I'm not crazy, we are perfect for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And what she's really saying, or I should say, what he's saying when he shares the crazy ex situation is this: I found these women, and when I turned up the abuse, they went crazy because they're living in abuse. And they left and they violated marriage vows, or they, gave up on the relationship too soon. But it was really, he's not taking responsibility for his actions. That's what the crazy ex list means. And what I didn't know when I heard about the crazy exes was that my name was going to be next on the list, because that's exactly what happened after I escaped. All of a sudden, I was an alcoholic. I was cheating on him. I was crazy. I had done X, Y, and Z. I was on the crazy list.
Yeah.
I am a little crazy, but not that kind of crazy.
A little crazy is healthy.
Everyone's a little crazy.
And I think that that's a really good thing for us to listen for, is how does our friend speak about their current partner, and what do they say about that partner's exes? Because if if somebody has had several different relationships and every partner they've had has wound up crazy, common denominator is that person.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're listening to your friends speak about their new partner and what they have to say about the former partners, that's a trigger, something to be aware of. Let's talk a little bit about, so in your book you have a variety of chapters and you talk about the different types of abuse or violence beyond the physical. Can you share a few of them as trigger warnings for people?
Yeah. So what typically happens, again, love bombing is abuse, right? Because it's done with the intention of gaining control over somebody. The next one that we want to look at is the idea of gaslighting. And gaslighting is pretty insidious, and it's based on the movie from, I think, the 40s or something. But it is when what the abuser is doing during gaslighting is he's making his victim question her own sanity. So he says that I'm crazy. He says he never did that, or I must be lying, or I'm making things up. And it's a whole host of phrases that you will hear from your victim about how she is now sitting there thinking, well, maybe I did hear that wrong. Maybe I did get that information incorrect. Maybe I didn't write it down correctly. So she's starting to question her own sanity. And really what he's doing also is he will fly into a rage during gaslighting. He starts screaming, you're out to get me. You are creating drama. Why do you do this? And then a hit of love bombing comes back in. So he got really mad at me on Tuesday for this, but then Tuesday night he took me out to my favorite restaurant, and we had a very romantic evening. So it's this cycle of abuse and love bombing that creates what's called a trauma bond. The abuser wants to do this, create this trauma bond as soon as humanly possible. The trauma bond basically says that, or basically does, that your victim believes all the abuse is her fault. She can make it better. And as I say in the book, she gets on her little hamster wheel and starts running at top speed to make him happy. She doesn't stand a chance. And that is essentially a trauma bond. You're in this cycle of trying to clean better, remember things better, make him happy, adjust your schedule, just to stop him from screaming, but he's never going to stop screaming. You're trauma bonded to him. So those are the two first big pieces that we look for. It's the gaslighting, questioning her sanity. He's totally lying the whole time. And then comes in the trauma bond. And then we look for other forms of abuse, like financial abuse. This is when they're a little bit more connected and he controls all of the money. I can remember the day when my abuser said to me, I need to see all your financial statements. He was on a mission to figure out what I had and then used it against me because I didn't have enough, according to him. Right. So we can see all of these little forms of abuse seeping into relationships.
So another part of the financial piece would be a partner who controls the money, controls how much you have to spend. And I know in your book, you speak about how even though you were paying for groceries and meals and, you know, parts of vacations, you were continually told that you weren't contributing at all.
I remember the screaming fight. I pay for 100. He screamed at me. I pay for 100% of vacations and 100% of the bills in this house. And I was like, no, I don't. We split everything. And I had to fight back. And here's the thing. When I fought back and I said, that's insane. He said, why are you causing such drama and disagreeing with me? I was like, because you're lying. And that's, you know, so that's what we look for. And we listen very carefully as the support team, as the friend, as the colleague. We listen for these things very, very carefully so we can say, aha, I'm hearing abuse. It doesn't sound like she's being hit. I don't see the black eye. I don't see the broken bones and the bruises. But this is a terror. She must be living in hell.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said a little bit earlier, when you were talking about, you begin to wonder, like, am I going crazy? Did I not hear that right? Did I write that down wrong? Can we expect to see in our friends that are experiencing this, that perhaps somebody who used to be very sure of herself is starting to second guess herself and getting mousier, might not be the right word, but more, you know, closed in, shelled, enclosed, not feeling as though she used to be a decision maker and now she's not. Like, are those things that we could look for?
Absolutely. That is a phenomenal point to bring up. So one thing that will happen is an abuser will say, a victim will be talking to her abuser and say, oh, I'm going to apply for this job at work, but, you know, I'm not very confident that I'll get it. There's other people that are more experienced or highly educated. And then he says to her, you shouldn't, you know, and so you do see your friend who used to be the go-getter start to, like, who cares if you don't have the credentials, go for it, right? And he does start to erode that. The insidious part of abuse is that he then, 100%, couple months later, will look at her and say, I don't know why you're not trying to advance your career. Why didn't you go for that job a couple of months ago? And it's because my primary person told me not to. And you sit there and you watch your friend no longer going for big opportunities, or when she has big opportunities in front of her, she steps back for the first time. Because here's the thing that abusers don't like. Abusers don't like successful partners.
Yeah.
They always need to be the one on top of the relationship. They always need to be the breadwinner, because the more notoriety she has, the more connection she has, the more money she has, the more ability she has to leave. And he wants to start to put up those barriers to her leaving as soon as possible.
Yeah. Absolute power and control.
Right.
Yeah. So for those of us who, you know, are watching our friends being aware of behavior changes in our friends. And I would think that they may start to say stuff like, well, we can't because so and so, I'm gonna like, I don't want to give any names, right? Because like, I don't want to, because he said, we've got to do something for the weekend, or he's already made plans, or I have to ask him if it's okay.
Have to ask permission.
Yeah,
And guess what's coming? No permission.
right.
It's never going to be given.
Yeah. All right. So I will tell you that for those of you who are watching this, we are going to talk about what to say and what not to say. But there are two other groups of people I want to talk about first. The first were the flying monkeys, and this was a new concept to me. So who are the flying monkeys? And the reason I'm bringing this up in our conversation, for those of you who are watching, is because I think that we can be aware of the flying monkeys in our life and see it as another way in to supporting our friends.
Yeah. So flying monkeys, very standard term used in the world of abuse. And if you do research on narcissism, you'll find that they always have a group of flying monkeys around them. Flying monkeys are victims of the abuser. I want to say that right up front. And they do the bidding of the abuser. Usually a flying monkey is someone with a dilapidated life themselves, and the abuser gives them something. So he may give them business referrals. He may be their only friend. He controls the guy's ski week every year, and they want to be invited. But to get in on the inner circles of his life, they need to then do things. So when he is in positions of abusing his significant other or the friend group in general, the flying monkeys support him without question. And it's not just friends. Flying monkeys can also be family members. They can be colleagues. And here's the key point in flying monkeys: don't become one. What we typically see in abusive relationships is the abuser, and my abuser did not do this with me because my friends realized right away that what was going on, like they didn't like him from the get-go. But what he does slowly but surely is he gets the family to love him. He gets the friends to love him. And then as he turns up the abuse and she starts to spiral, he goes to her friends and family and says, she's having some problems. And the friends and family now think she's the one with the problem. And she is living in this mess and chaos. And now he's got his friends and family who are flying monkeys, and he's got her friends and family who are flying monkeys, and she's left with no one. So I always say, remember what side of the relationship you came in on and who you're a support person to. Because if you had a friend who was sane and reasonable before she met her abuser, you need to carry that through as she's struggling or he comes to you with these things in the relationship. So, and flying monkeys, he has groomed them for years on his side. They can be his parents who just want him under the Christmas tree. They want a place to come to watch the football game on Sundays. All of those reasons, his siblings who just want the big family Christmas picture, whatever they're looking for, but also their friends who want to be invited on the ski trip, who don't have a lot in their own life. And typically also the friends who have messes in their own life love to jump into the life of the abuser because his life is always a chaotic mess and they can placate him, right? So he's like, oh, Jen is having a lot of problems and is causing all this drama. And the flying monkeys are like, give it to me. Like, I don't have to pay attention to my life now. I can concentrate on you.
It also sounds like there, and I don't know this, but I imagine that there's a fraction of, and I don't know what the fraction is, of abusers who are actually very charismatic. And so, it's part of the charm that allows them to lure in the flying monkeys.
You're the big man on campus.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is. So he's always doing something fun. And typically, well, I shouldn't say typically. But the research does show that they're also excellent at things. So they're excellent at saving money. They're excellent at golf. They're excellent at pool. They're excellent at whatever they put their hands on because they've honed their skills to always be the top dog.
Ah,
That's their goal.
okay. Okay, so we've talked about flying monkeys, and I think I love your point about don't become one. Don't join in on the circus. Let's talk about the cheer squad. And I think that most of the people who watch these videos are women. And ladies, I think it's really important that you learn what it is to be a member of a cheer squad so you do not become one.
Exactly. So first of all, I want to say that the cheer squad, as I say in the book, had a previous name to it, which I believe is culturally inappropriate. So if you're looking up cheer squad on the internet, all you'll find is my stuff. You may find another term, and if you'd like me to share it with you, I'll put it in the comments.
Okay.
But cheer squad are a group, typically of the opposite gender, who fall all over the abuser. And my abuser had a gaggle of them. Our relationship was very, very crowded. And it was a group of women who had some of the characteristics that he wanted in me. So some of them were excellent tennis players. Some of them were blonde and thin. Some of them were good listeners. All of them had major train wrecks in their life in some way, which was also interesting. So they were never up to snuff for him, but he didn't tell them that. And so whether they were on the tennis court, at work, wherever he was, at a conference, he had cheer squad at conferences that he would go to. Wherever he was, he could say, I'm having a lot of problems with Jen. Here's what's going on. And they would say, aw, but you're such a great guy. Look at all you've done for her. And look at the relationship you want. And aw. He then would come back and say, here's what Mary said about you, that you should get in line, not cause so much stress, blah, blah, blah. And every single new job he took, conference he went to, sporting event, there was always a blonde walking out of it with him. It was unbelievable when I realized the pattern. And I always say our relationship got really, really crowded. And then what was very upsetting to me was he would say things like, well, I talked to Mary about this at the office today, and she thinks, and I was like, doesn't Mary realize how inappropriate it is for her to be having this kind of intimate friendship with a colleague? But she loved the attention. That's what she was craving because she wasn't getting it from her primary relationship. And to your point, he was very charismatic.
Right. And I think that it's important for us to be aware of the role that we might inadvertently play, to become aware of it so that we don't become part of the cheer squad. So if you're hearing somebody speak of their partner and all of the problems and you're there for it, eating it up, and you feel like you're becoming a comrade for the person doing the complaining, be aware that you are being sucked into something that serves nobody but the abuser.
Right? Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about what to say and what not to say. So you see a friend and you've some of the things that Jennifer has mentioned, you are seeing, you are not really sure, but you've got a spidey sense about it. Let's talk a little bit about what to say and what not to say.
So the first thing to do is to educate yourself. And Google is a wonderful tool for this. If you do your research and figure out exactly what you're dealing with. And once you know that your friend may be in trouble, you have to know your friend best. So number one, do not give up on her. So before you even get to saying anything, commit to supporting her through this however you need to. She's living in hell. And if you are the type of person who's noticing things, she needs you desperately. So that's very, very important. Number two, there are resources available to you. So I don't want to say my book, but my book is a resource because
Oh,
at the end of
absolutely. See your book.
every chapter, I do share like what to say in these situations. There's also the 1-800 number for the domestic violence hotline. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. So there's also the 1-800 number for the domestic violence hotline that you can call. Every community in the United States has a domestic violence hotline as well. So if you're struggling to find the words, call in, right?
Hmm.
People are available to you 24/7 to get this help. And then you got, like I said, you got to know your friend. What is she going to respond to? Is she going to respond to a book? Is she going to respond to a text? The best thing to say is, "Hey, I'm hearing this from you. Ready? Tell me more.
Mm.
I'm here listening. I'm fully engaged. I'm concerned about what I'm hearing. Tell me more." That immediately will open up a window and a door for you. What you don't want to say is this: "We're never going out to dinner with them again because he's such a jerk." Right? She needs you going out to dinner with him, sadly. And she needs you very focused on him and what you're noticing. And then again, start to drip information to her. It may be a video you find on YouTube, it may be a social media post, it may be a book, but that's kind of hard because then you are dripping information that she has in a physical form and you don't want him to find it.
Right.
You also don't want to say, "I know that this is domestic violence and you need to get out and he needs to stop treating you and the children like this." Because here's what will usually happen. And I would have done this. I would have run home and said to him, "Mary thinks that you're a domestic violence abuser and you need to cut it out." He will immediately berate the victim and he will mandate that you never see Mary again, that the victim never sees Mary again. It's guaranteed that that is what's going to happen. He may even call Mary and blast her. We don't know what's going to happen, but you will no longer have that open window to your friend or colleague or loved one or family member or sister, because the abuser, you've now set this up as a domestic violence situation. And you, Mary, the friend, the concerned citizen, is now the one who is an enemy.
Right.
So that is critical. So it's slow. Tell me more. It can then eventually turn into, "You know what? I think that we can call the local domestic violence center. Let's just hear them out. Let's hear what they have to say." Like if maybe so there's resources. She doesn't need to spend a ton on therapy. She doesn't need to find the perfect marriage counseling will not work in these situations. So that's useless. So your victim needs to find her own path out.
So what I'm hearing is you want open-ended conversations versus problem solving.
Right. Or if you do problem solving too quickly, you will become the problem. Stop talking about him like that. I love him. The kids are fine. And if he's abusing the mom, again, let's just use those terms. He's also abusing the children in some way. It may not be physical either, but it's emotional and psychological abuse to the kids. So it's better to take a little bit more time, step back, find your resources, and find your way in.
I love the tip, and I never would have thought about it, is that as a friend and a support person, I can also call the domestic abuse hotline for help on how to help. That's brilliant.
Yeah, so I went through the training already with PCADV, which here in Pennsylvania is the governing organization of all domestic violence centers. And one of the things that we learn about is how do you support the support person? And as now I'm working in the organization with clients and on the hotline, we do get calls. This is what I'm seeing. And so it's the resource is available to you. Use the resource. Let's get her out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a bit about you leave, right? You've stepped out and the work that you do at that point.
So it's painful and it doesn't come easy because, and here's what happened. Once you leave an abuser, I had no idea that this was going to happen. I was shocked. You enter this phase of post-separation abuse. This is when you see the diabolical sociopath. This is when he's knocking on your door at 7 a.m. He's screaming at you on the street. He's sitting outside your home watching you walk your dog and texting you about it. He is calling 50 times a day. He's threatening you through your lawyers. Everything. It's a circus. And I finally, at the suggestion of a friend, called my local domestic violence center for help with a restraining order. And the woman, the hotline volunteer, said to me, "We're going to get you that legal help that you need. Would you like to talk to someone?" And I said, "I don't need to talk to someone at a domestic violence shelter. I wasn't hit."
Mm.
And she said to me at that time, "I know. Now I'm also hysterically crying in fear." That was my call-in persona at that point. And she very, very gently, the sarcastic Jersey girl in me will say, "Look, lady, you're calling a domestic violence center for help with a restraining order, and you're scared to death for your life, and you just left this guy. Guess what? You're a victim of domestic violence." But she didn't go there. She just said, "Well, we have some help, that can get you through this time to make sure you're okay."
Mm.
I then went through 8 sessions of crisis counseling, 20 sessions of talk therapy, trauma therapy. I did about 10 sessions of EMDR, which is a very specialized therapy for trauma victims, and incredibly painful. I did countless support groups that I logged in through the center, 3 full educational programs. Took about a year and a half. And at the end, I was more whole and complete than I've ever been in my life. The problem, or the goals that you set for therapy, your post-separation abuse life, is what's going on, how to survive the storm of what's going on, how to then heal from that storm and make it through, heal from what he did that you never even realized, rebuild your life. But here's the kicker: there's something in every victim survivor that drove her into the arms of an abuser.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to find those core wounds and heal them. And I will never forget when my therapist said to me, "We're now going to work on the core wounds that drove you into the arms of an abuser." And I was like, "Oh, wait, no, this wasn't my fault." And she goes, "I'm not saying the abuse was your fault, but there's something that made you tolerate it." And she introduced me to the magical world, Yvette, of boundaries.
Yeah.
And I went, "What?" So we went back and healed those wounds from where I was never allowed to establish boundaries.
Yeah.
And that has made all the difference in the world. So that's the healing process. You have to burn down who you were as a person, go through like the caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly, however you want to frame this. You can do the transmutation of the butterfly, you can do alchemy, whatever framework you want to put this healing journey into. But I am a radically different person now. I'm still the same core of who I was, but a radically different person about how I look at life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the transformation of healing. When I left, I was dilapidated. My business was on life support. I was devastated at what was going on. I was still madly in love with him, but I knew I couldn't stand for it anymore. And the rest, everybody else helped me along with.
And I know we spoke about how your choice of healing, you did a lot of the intellectual, you did the talk therapy, you did all that. And I also want to bring into the conversation that energy work, the type of work that I do, can also help, because your nervous system, you talk in your book about your soul being exhausted, right? And your nervous system is totally jacked up. And with energy healing, it can help soothe it and, bring it back to center for you to do that other work that you were doing.
Right. And remember, at this time when the post-separation abuse is going on and she's healing and she's scared to death about finances and her kids are doing whatever they're doing, she's also supposed to be rebuilding her life at the same time and having the ability to come back to center is critical. And here's the other thing that energy work can do. Everyone is so excited she's out, right? You're getting high-fived. I want to see you again, take you out to dinner. You're the strongest person ever. And she's sitting there a mess because she misses him. And she's mourning the person she thought he was, the relationship that she made up in her head, a future now that's never going to happen. And she's sitting there like, what is going on? So being able to get very clear on where your center is and sit in that and get a little selfish and concentrate on you for once, that's where the healing and energy work comes into play. And we talked a lot about, your soul being exhausted. You got to go turn the lights back on in your soul because your abuser forced you to tuck away your soul, your self-confidence, your self-awareness. You didn't matter as a person. And the only way to survive was for you to shut all that down. And at some point towards the end of the heavy healing journey, I said, I got to go turn the lights back on in my soul. And that was incredibly eye-opening to me.
Wow. Whew. Any last words that you'd like to share? Oh, before you go to last words, I know that you're on a mission. And so I would like for you to share, who is it that you would like to meet so that you can bring the work that you're doing forward into this world to help with the healing?
Oh, thank you for giving me the opportunity to say that. So I want to talk to any corporate HR executives, any government officials, and anyone in educational experiences, K to 12, colleges, universities, who have the ability to bring in speakers to educate groups of people on domestic violence. It's time that we realize that employee Karen may be a victim, but also employee Yvette, who's supporting Karen, needs to be empowered in what to do. And worse, if you, Yvette, have a sister that you support every day and night who's going through this, you need support in the office to know what is going on as well. So those are really the groups that I'm looking. Anyone that brings in training to groups of employees, people, sororities, the Greek life systems, that's important as well. Let's train the younger generations to recognize the signs of abuse so that they can say, wait a minute, my friend's boyfriend, I thought he was a jerk. He's got abuser potential. Let's start talking about this.
Right. Right. And I will tell you, for those of you who have Kindle Unlimited, you can get Jennifer's book for free, which is a price that a lot of people love. So Kindle Unlimited, go get your copy. If you want the hard copy book, you can find it on Amazon. Any last words before we go?
Yeah, I want to thank you for being part of the solution. It's these kind of conversations that hopefully, if we save one person now or 5 years in the future, when someone recognizes it in her daughter's boyfriend or in their colleague, or it empowers them in some way to make a difference, you're part of the solution. And I thank you so much for that. So get educated, listen to videos about this. And the solution is not to heal this abusers. The solution is to empower everyone to know what abuse looks like and help the victims and survivors rebuild their lives.
Jennifer, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.